شكرا للسيد إيثان كنت. والآن مع جلسة ستأخذنا إلى قلب المفاهيم المعمارية التي تصنع الفارق في حياة الناس. كيف نبني مساكن لا تكتفي بتوفير المأوى، بل تلهم، تراعي البيئة، وتشجع على التعايش المجتمعي. نرحب بالسادة المتحدثين في الجلسة النقاشية: سعادة الدكتور ماهر الشاعر، العضو المنتدب ونائب رئيس مجلس إدارة شركة بريق الرتاج بمملكة البحرين. السيد أولي ليككالا، الرئيس التنفيذي لشركة Disperse بالمملكة المتحدة. السيد إيثان هولز، مدير الابتكار في الإسكان الاجتماعي والبناء في المملكة المتحدة. ومجددا معنا السيد إيثان كنت، الرئيس التنفيذي لشركة PlacemakingX بالولايات المتحدة الأمريكية. ويدير هذه الجلسة السيد مصطفى شريف، وهو مخطط حضري، صانع أماكن، ومدير استديو.
قبل أن نبدأ الجلسة أحب أوجه تحية وبارك سعادة الوزيرة على الإنجازات ما شاء الله اللي حققتوها. إن شاء الله نسأل رب العالمين يوفقكم للأهداف الجاية، وإن شاء الله تخدمون الناس. وشكرا على حسن التخطيط والكرم البحريني، شكرا جزيلا. So in this session, I'd love to welcome all of you. Happy to be here. Looking forward to our conversation. And this panel will be about innovation in construction toward more sustainable social housing. We're going to explore more innovation, AI, the low cost, high quality of social housing, and much more. So I'd love to start with you, Dr. Maher. What is the role of private sector in driving innovation, and how can you do it?
Thank you very much. And first of all, I would like to thank you for inviting me for this session and panel discussion, and special thanks for Her Excellency Amna bint Ahmed Ramayahi, Minister of Housing. Thank you very much for inviting us. Of course, you know that the developer play a main role in social housing, especially big developers dealing with the ministries and other big joint venture to develop cities, I would say. And we were one of the developers actually being lucky to work with the Ministry of Housing and developing a few projects. But the main role of actually the developer start from master planning, design, what sort of components to be included within the city or within the area of the social housing. In Bahrain, we have some sort of difference between social housing and affordable housing. Social housing mostly to do with the ministry, and from the private sector, we call it affordable housing, as it's actually being sold to end users. So we start, from master plan, design, and we go all the way of developing it up to hand over the keys to end users. So it's a major role, and developer should take it very serious in thinking of actually how to be smart, how to cover all the requirement of the end users, especially within the region and within the GCC. There is a lot of important requirements. It's more as a social requirement, some sort of educational requirement, for schools, mosques, even within the house itself. They like to have courtyards, privacy issues that need to be covered. So it's not easy
Of course.
to cover all the need. We try our best to actually cover all the need, and we take it from there.
Yeah, amazing. And Ian, based on your experience within the governmental ecosystem, we listened to D.Maher talking about the role of private sector and developers. What can governments do to encourage more innovation when it comes to social housing?
I think part of the difficulty from the UK's side is the lack of interaction. We're specifically working on modern methods of construction. And whilst there is a lot of innovation, a lot of companies that have R&D budgets to spend a lot of money in comparison to what they make.
Yeah.
Overall, the interaction from the innovation to it actually getting into practice and being used is solely lacking. The ideal scenario would be to have a case, because we do have some fantastic methodology behind our building control in the UK, but it's left with building control. There needs to be the innovators, the people that are working within modern methods of construction, to be able to interact with the powers that be, so they're aware as to how the technology is developing. For social housing, we can access Homes England grant funding to fill the gap between the costs. But for us to implement, what we've been looking at specifically was 3D concrete printing. But that has not yet passed BOPAS in the UK, which is a building scale used to allow you to access grant funding. And similarly, other modern methods of construction haven't got quite through the government channels that need to have that tick to allow you to use them within both social and affordable housing, and to utilize the grant money that is available to make this more efficient for the end user, being the people. I mean, we're trying to develop and build new properties where the end user and the occupant will not have an energy bill by utilizing, heat pumps, solar PV, battery storage, and working directly in conjunction with the utility provider, where we can feed back to the grid to offset what the use is. Now, to integrate that technology into the existing housing stock which we have is a nightmare. We've had an issue trying to integrate heat pumps into existing properties. So to bring that technology to make it more affordable for the people that need it, who are those that can't afford and can't access housing, does make it difficult to develop modern methods of technology into the social and the affordable housing part of what we're trying to deliver.
Yeah, and Iethán, what do you think? How can governments and cities push for more innovation?
Well, first of all, conversations like this are a great way to open up, to connect people and build the learning culture, invite people in locally and globally to be part of your story. I think ultimately innovation is about cultural innovation. It's about allowing people to connect and learn together. But I also think public spaces and a focus on the places between buildings is a way to build a culture of innovation, both because public spaces do create and showcase culture, but we actually did a lot of work also with innovation districts all over the world, working with Brookings Institution, and we looked at what makes innovation districts actually innovative, but also what makes them inclusive, and what helps lead to economic growth. And in almost all cases, the biggest limiting factor in innovation districts was places where people bump into each other across sectors, across disciplines. And the limiting factor for inclusion was also places. How you can have lots of investment, outside investment in infrastructure, but if it's not connecting people, and if it's not spinning off to people that are already in that community or lower income populations, a lot of that money just leaves the community, that country. So place and stronger communities and place attachment are ways to support inclusion, but really are what drive innovation. And if you think about it, a lot of the best products, the best ideas, the best cultural leadership around the world came from places where people were mixing, where they were bumping into each other, where they had attachment to that place. And the products and ideas that came out of those places reflected the culture of those places as well. So we say it takes a place to create a community and a community to create a place. How you have major opportunities to leverage your great investments in infrastructure now to create places that reflect and build your cultural identity and your culture of innovation.
So you mean the innovation is not only about technology and data and so on. It could be more like cultural as well by having a
Both.
public spaces.
Both, yeah, for sure.
Dr. Maher, what is your reflection about this? Like having this kind of innovation?
Yeah, in our case, I think it's not easy, and there is a lot of challenges. If we are talking about a close community, which you will be able to, charge fees and service charge and all that, it will be very easy. So you can do the full integration, spend a big capex to actually cover all the need and all that.
Yeah.
But with the affordable housing, it's a big challenge.
Because of?
Because it's not a community that you'll be able to cover the costs through the income from the end users. So we have to be very smart. Okay, so we usually see what is the need, and we usually do some surveys and all that, and there is a need that you should do, but we have to work closely with the end users.
Yeah.
Okay, what they would like to have, how to make them sustainable. Okay, happy where they live, the cost of actually running costs for the houses, and the expense in the monthly basis that will not be exceeding their target and all that. So it's not easy, okay, to accommodate that, but in a certain cases we work out solution, whether it's a U value to reduce the energy, smart meters to actually to control the need, a special aluminum and double glazed, okay, to reduce also the heat, giving them the other community requirement is very important especially for Bahrainis. So you need to make sure everything is connected to their area, easy to walk to the mosque, to the retail and other areas. So they look into these things, and it's very important for them. And before people actually come and buy the house, they ask about all that. Even the size of the garage for the cars. Okay, how many
cars fit?
Yeah. Okay, so how many cars actually they can park and all that. So they're conducting a separate door for their outdoor Mejlis, okay, outdoor kitchen. So from the house to the whole community, you need to actually make sure that it's covered their need.
So there is a thought like behind what communities need and so on. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love to come back to this also when it comes to affordability and low cost and so on. Now I love to explore with you, Mr. Oli, about AI and data and how can it help us when it comes to the construction phase. You have a very interesting story and also running a business. I love that you share with us more about.
Thank you, Mustafa. Can everyone hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Great. So yeah, first of all, thank you as well very much to Her Excellency and the Ministry for extending their invitation. Feel very privileged to be here. And ashkuruka jazil al-shukr. So just for a bit of background, okay, what do we do? So we work with a lot of kind of the bigger developments, construction companies, with the idea of like, bringing confidence and a kind of full visibility into how, your construction projects are going. And we do that with creating like a visual time machine of your project. So every week, 360 photos of everything that's happening and providing then like full progress reporting, issue reporting, both to the executives as well as kind of the teams on the ground. In terms of kind of AI in construction and the technology where we are still very much early days. We are in its infancy. I think if I think of like, hey, okay, what is the value that we're bringing in today? I would actually even argue that like we're not necessarily doing anything dramatically different to what like some of the best teams in the world are doing. So if I go, if we work with some of like the kind of leading teams, even in this, in this region, in UK, like when I look at like the project controls here, for instance, is incredibly advanced and like incredibly capable. And I think when I think of, okay, what can AI do? I think it's more like two things, right? So one, we're helping basically kind of deliver all of those analytics and insights faster, simply, and more scalably. So we've done ROI studies with, developments like Canary Wharf in the UK, where we can, drive efficiencies with the project team of up to 20%. And so if you think of the construction managers, the project directors, project teams, driving efficiencies of up to 20%, it adds up, right, a lot. And, especially when we have labor shortages, you can just do more. And the second element is, democratizing this, right? So if we think of like housing developments all around the world, I think of my homeland, Finland, not too much experiences from building skyscrapers as an example, but like being able to kind of democratize all of this we're working with the leading companies around the world, being able to channel that knowledge and channel those insights also to, developments around the world.
So it's more about like saving resources or being efficient.
Yeah.
But I mean, like if I am a property developer and I want also to save my cost and budget, if I integrate AI, then it's going to cost me a lot because I need to pay for a subscription, and then we are back to the same step. Then it's cost.
Yeah, I think so I can only speak from our experience, but so we've done, like, if you look at our costs of a solution like ours, like you're talking, for a residential development, you might have like $500 to $1,000 per unit when you add things up. And, that might be 0.1% of construction value. If you look at, okay, what is the cost of, project delays, rework, those amounts don't, they are, small in retrospect. Even if you look at the maintenance, like let's say you buy a new house, like would you pay $500 or $1,000 to have like the as-built history of your apartment, right? You probably would. So that alone, I think, can justify the cost.
Yeah. So more like in the long run, it saves money.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And Ian, you work with this finding the perfect formula: low cost, low carbon, high quality.
Yeah.
Is it possible, or how is it possible?
Going back to how we started, we were and still are hoping to build in 3D concrete printing. The only way that we could do that is to find our own network, our own team of people. We have our architect, we have our QS, but we need to look at where the materials come from. So to directly connect with the likes of Tarmac, for argument's sake, on a project like that, where 65, 70% of what you're using is going to be concrete, and they produce quite a lot of it. That way, buying both into the premise of what we're trying to do, and then also into the ethos of what Building for Humanity are going to be doing as well for the people that live with us. We have approached these people and spoken on high levels to explain we need to make it efficiently. We do need to save money on the costs, but we do not want to lose any of the quality. And that way, between the architects and between our supply network, we've managed to come up with a build design which has been looked at as an equivalent to passive house in relation to thermal conductivity and U ratings. We've got triple glazed units as opposed to double glazed, infrared heating systems. And regardless as to whether we're 3D concrete printing, this is going into any of the builds that we are doing with modern methods of construction, to make it low cost for the resident and to make it a low cost option for us to build by creating a blueprint which is replicable throughout several different areas without increasing the cost of the supply chain. So by incorporating that, and the fact that we're working on a reasonably small level, we're trying to utilize brownfield and greyfield sites. Obviously the UK has not got a huge amount of spare land knocking around. And to take the opportunity to redevelop something that's inside an existing urban environment and to create something which is light, which is green, which is slightly different to what is surrounding it, can then show other people that social housing and affordable housing doesn't have to look as bad as some of the examples that we do have in the UK are. We're struggling at the moment to try and make fit the housing stock that people are currently living in, which makes it even more difficult when you're trying to actively build new properties.
Exactly. And d.Maher, I want to elaborate more about this aspect of low cost, high quality, because when it comes to smart houses, sustainability, maybe this kind of project costs At the same time, we want to create something affordable. How can
Yeah.
we keep the balance in this formula?
Yeah, it's not easy.
Yeah.
We've been trying to see other method of construction like 3D printing.
Mm.
You know, they're still studying that, but I think there is a need that you need to deliver.
Yeah.
Okay. So we cannot reduce the quality. We cannot reduce the size.
Mm.
Okay, for those affordable housing. But from other hand, we will have to give them a sustainable design, or sustainable life, by reducing other costs through, let's say, procurement strategy, a proper procurement strategy that, okay, bulk procurement of material and other, having a good relationship with the government deal to give some incentives, okay, like, okay, covering some of that infrastructure, having a good financing funding costs, okay, for the project, so you reduce it from the other side, so you'll be able to cover all the other initiative that actually the developer will add on to make it more attractive to the end users. So there is a need in having a proper collaboration and coordination between all, I would say, you know, the party involved, the ministry, the developer, contractor, building material supplier. But I think, yeah, there is some ideas. It's not easy to have the right price with the required need and the ask.
Yeah.
Especially here in the region, they are not accepting a certain size, okay, or a certain apartment buildings to live in. So we are having some difficulties to actually giving them, okay, the size they need
for affordable.
Okay, with the apartment scale or within the building. But I think still it's a challenge.
Yeah.
That we need to work on it. We can give them more, a better, I would say, product by having more support from the government and the other parties that actually will allow us to reduce some of the costs to improve the quality.
So reducing the cost or keeping this formula, it's a lot to do with the collaboration with the government. So you can maybe reduce some cost there in order to deliver something.
Yeah, when I say government, it's not only the ministry.
Of course, like it's the other entities as well.
All, like, you know,
departments,
custom side, whether reducing some of the custom duties and other governmental authorities that actually need to support in the actually whether the U value that actually and the requirement of the actually some of the requirements are adding a lot of cost.
Yeah, because
so they need to look into actually having a different specification to reduce the cost for the developer will be able to offer a better product.
Yeah. And Ethan, you mentioned in your presentation about public spaces and how much value it adds to the businesses, to people, and so on. Does it cost so much to add these kind of spaces and to maintain these spaces and so on, based on the project you work with?
A great question. We find that a lot of the best public spaces around the world don't cost a lot. And you think of souks, there's not a lot of public investment in them. It's more how you organize private investment and more importantly, how you enable it to self-organize itself. The best public spaces are self-managed, self-organized. People raise their level of behavior to contribute to shared experience. You don't necessarily even have to regulate some of the businesses in a souk because they all raise their behavior to add to each other. They self-regulate. That doesn't mean you can start that way. With new developments, you need to build public spaces to be, you need to seed them often with activity, and you need to support it. But ultimately, the goal is to support and allow the locals, the inhabitants, to take ownership over those public spaces, to feel like it's theirs. And that's when it moves from being a house. what is it that turns a house into a home and a space into a place? And it's really a sense of ownership, of attachment, of commitment, of shared responsibility. And the things that make a house a home or a space a place, again, aren't that more, some very expensive houses and very expensive spaces fail as homes or places. So we say with activating public spaces, we talk about lighter, quicker, cheaper. It's, looking at markets, at events, at just putting out some seating. There's small things, and in a place to sip and an excuse to spend time there, to have tea, to watch your children play, while you connect with your friends. Those are some of those valuable times people have in their lives. Yet we don't design our public realm to support that. It doesn't cost more, and it's what ensures the success of these big investments. It and drives the market for more development. It's how we're going to make your economy resilient to sort of shifts in the global economy is really how attached people are, locals and global partners, to the culture and identity of places here. And so the investment is imperative for that long-term success.
Yeah. So quick, light, and cheap could be a principle. Yeah.
Yes.
And to you, Oli, you mentioned about the AI and data analytics. It can run with minimum input of human. I mean, in the end, we are listening here. It's about building social houses for people. So how can we trust an AI to manage all of this? Can we get the product that fits people needs?
Great question, because I also resonate with everything that's being said here. I think sustainable housing, very much about creating communities that last and people want to stay in, not just today, but 20 years, 30 years later, right? Technology might be one of those bubbles on the PowerPoint, but it's usually a means to an end, right? It's a tool to be used. So I think technology, in my opinion, technology has largely, in some ways, failed construction and real estate development. In the same way, it has failed a lot of other industries like education and healthcare, which is you keep introducing more process, more systems, more tools, more things to just update, and at the same time, the people actually doing the most important work, they no longer can do create the actual value, right? So teachers can't teach, doctors have no time to tend to patients, and it's same with construction teams, right? They don't have time to actually lead the project, make decisions, make the kind of things that really matter, right? And I think what AI and kind of where the technologies are going, I think will enable is, and then where the whole idea of basically taking work away from people is very important to us, is is exactly that, right? Like anything that creates more work, in my opinion, is a recipe to for a disaster. And I think that is why for us as well, we almost position ourselves almost something between a consultant and a software provider, because it is very much important to also do the service side of it. In terms of hey, can you trust decisions completely to AI? Of course not. We're even completely sort of transparent about the fact that hey, our process isn't 100% automated. They are, we have trained people throughout the whole way. And I think, that will be the reality for most systems, though the technology is developing very, very fast. But I would always think of it just how we use a lot of the ChatGPTs of the world. Of course, we're not going to delegate our most important life decisions to it. It's very much still almost like a manager-employee relationship, where they are there to kind of provide value to you, but you still need to basically almost supervise them, and that's very much kind of the relationship I drive.
So do you agree about this statement that I will make now? Is like a constructor or property developer with AI is much more sustainable, or delivering sustainable projects compared to a constructor without an AI tool?
So, of course, I think, AI solutions, etc., they will ultimately not make a project successful or not successful usually. Ultimately, it is still very much the project team. I think where solutions like ours can help is almost like empowering them, right? Making them sort of step up a few levels and taking a lot of the distractions. So the whole idea of automating the data collection so that they can focus on actually leading the projects and making decisions, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I love if we have the questions from our audience. Please feel free to comment or ask questions. Yes, please. Can we have a microphone? You can wait, it's coming.
Or you can come up to the podium or not?
Thank you, everyone. It's very informative panel. My question to Oli, is AI in construction and real estate development considered as luxury or essential today?
Sorry, is it considered?
As a luxury thing, as extra thing to do, or as essential for real estate development?
It's a difficult
I
question.
would say, so I'd say today, we in many ways doing a lot of the things you can also do with like a very strong team, right, at your disposal. So it is almost like I think you help them do more, but it's not necessarily like something I think you absolutely need, right? So I think your likelihood of kind of delivering projects on time and better, I think they're increased, but they, you know, whether there's a need or not, I think we're probably not there yet. 5-10 years from now, I think kind of the gap of and like the actual leverage you can have with these technologies, I would think will just continue to increase. And so maybe from that perspective as well, it's probably a question of like almost starting to acquaint yourself with those technologies so that, you know, later down the line, yeah. Yep.
I love to hear your opinion, D.Maher, about if AI is necessary for a developer or now it's luxury.
I think it will be necessary. I agree that in the future, but for now, I don't think it's ready.
Okay.
But okay, because there is a special need. Okay, in our region that AI maybe it will be, you know, through the AI it will be very difficult to do for
to solve it. Yeah.
Okay, so and you will have to then, you know, put every single requirement in detail. Okay, how you move from here to here, and okay, so I don't think it's ready yet.
Okay.
AI, it's all about basically saving, okay, resources, okay, and just do something, okay, very quickly. But I didn't see it yet.
Okay.
Okay, that it's ready to be used.
Yeah. So it's not necessary now.
Not now.
Not now.
Yeah.
Yeah. More questions from our audience? Yes, please. Also, introduce yourself to us.
Sure. Hello, my name is Arun Balu. I am the CEO of Ashore Consult. We advise various corporates on finance, risk, and human capital. My question is on development, especially on the retail side. How are developers now understanding their consumers before developing properties? Because different consumers look at sustainability differently. What are some of the new techniques that developers are using to see what is important for consumers? How are they innovating? How do they know that consumers in this particular area want certain type of properties? How do they do surveys? Do they have a conversation with the customers? Do they try out new properties? What are some of the best ways to try and understand the consumer? Thank you.
Good question. Maybe we start with you, Ian. You're building for humanity, huh?
Yeah, I mean, our main driver is not for the retail space, it is for the people, but we're working in a slightly different environment where we're developing an existing urban environment. So the retail space is already there. It may not be perfectly suitable for everybody because, again, you can never really judge that from the kind of people that you are placing. But yeah, it's not something with us not doing new large developments outside of town. It's not an issue that we've had to encounter, thankfully. But I have noticed that with some of the large developments that have been created in the UK, they haven't had, and it's quite obvious, they haven't had any input from the retail sector. Quite near to me, there was a very large development that went up over time to maybe 1,500 homes, and there was also an old person's home there. huge development. And then when he'd finished it, they realised there wasn't anywhere for them to go shopping. There was one little hub right in the middle. It was kind of like a small shop. But they'd got that much involved and bogged down with creating places where people can live. They never really thought what the immediate requirements are there for them. So I think it's something that, again, going back to my earlier point about having more interaction between the local and the national government to the developers to bring that into a fray. At the moment, we just get told, well, 25% of what you develop has to be affordable or social. But there isn't really a huge amount then in addition to that to stipulate what the requirements of that additional populace, the weight that puts on the existing resources.
Yeah.
And I think that does need to have a larger place in urban planning, and particularly with new rural planning. But the difficulty you've got with spreading out from greyfield to greenfield then is, the small communities that are already there suddenly have no other option but to become a larger community and have large supermarkets and chains put upon them. So you've got to be careful not to remove the identity of existing conurbations whilst you are trying to cope with the demand for new.
And I love to hear global perspective and local. How do you do it in بريق الرتاج? Like, how do you have a conversation with the end users and know what people love to have?
Yeah, it all depends actually what I think it's a generic question. If it's related to
if we say social
affordable
housing.
And social housing, we do our own market research. And of course, we look into the demand and the supply market. We coordinate with the ministry and to see what is the number of their waiting list, what is the I would say salary grades and requirements, and we do our I would say tests. To build our own
scenario
house as a model house to see the feedback from the end users, they like it or not, what they need to change, and then we take it from there. So if we see that there is a good demand, we go and build it.
Interesting. Ethan, how is it done in other cities?
Yeah, so I think it's actually a really important question. And our work started with lots of user analysis and surveying of people, doing focus groups. Increasingly, though, it became about let's create spaces that are flexible and allow things to evolve and try things, low-cost experiments, because a lot of the best developments, again, are anchored by spaces that are flexible and have relationships to retail that are additive. So we work with retail consultants, actually rather than having to make the retail be the anchor tenant, the public space becomes the anchor tenant, and then they know what kind of retail adds to that. They know that public space is going to work and be active, so the retail can more likely give to it. Unfortunately, in a lot of sort of more generic global developments, the retail takes value from the public realm. It's more about its own brand. And you have to take a more conservative approach to the investment, and it really degrades the local identity, local culture, and really most of the money in those types of businesses leaves the country again, and further degrades local identity. So we think of a healthy city has a full spectrum, and a healthy development has a full spectrum of informal to formal retail, low price point, high price point. And you want opportunities for people to enter the market as a retailer. You want informal souks and markets at the middle to activate public spaces, leading and helping them incubate businesses to become more permanent spaces, perhaps. But you want businesses and retail that adds to the space. So it's creating these ecosystems and the infrastructure to allow that to happen, to be flexible. You don't want a monoculture of types of retail, types of development. Makes it more vulnerable to market shifts, and you need a whole spectrum of different types of places too, of parks and squares and souks and streets that enable variety and interest.
Thanks, Ethan. Do we have more? Yes, please.
Thank you very much. I think my question is for all, and specifically for Mr. Oli. The Kingdom of Bahrain has announced the net zero emission target by 2060. And I know that in UK and many European countries, they moved from the urbs to the suburbs. And that caused them to get rid, sorry to say that, of some of the agriculture lands and change them into housing projects. Now, using AI or any other tool or means, how can we move and change the land use from agriculture to residential, be it low density or high density? This is a challenge for Bahrain, honestly. As you know, Bahrain is only 780 square kilometers. Comparing it to other GCC countries, we are a very small country and got scarcity in lands. So we need to achieve the goals being set by the higher officials in the government. So how can we do that? And can we use AI to do that for us? Thank you very much.
Good question. And maybe if I can ask for a quick clarifying question there as well. And so how are you, so you're thinking of how can you repurpose land from, let's say, agriculture as an example to, housing and other developments. How are you maybe, where is kind of the main, would you see kind of AI fitting in? What's like the vision you might have in your mind?
We've been asked by our Prime Minister, my minister is sitting here as well. So we've been asked to find lands close to people's family, where they live, their parents. Not only that, land, as I said, Bahrain is small, and land prices changing, hitting the sky every other day. They are very expensive. So for people to have their own house, by the help of Ministry of Housing and Urban Developments, they have to pay some from their own pockets. Okay, so as I said, we have a target in Bahrain that we need to reach the net zero emission, greenhouse emission, by 2060. And that is also sort of one of the government objectives, is to increase the green area in Bahrain. So on one hand, you have to increase the green area. On the other hand, you have to change the land use in order to use some of those agriculture areas, if you like, and change the land use into housing projects. So this is the challenge that we are in. And now what we do it, by human. We just study it. So by the way, I am the chief of urban planning in the Ministry of Housing and Urban Planning. So we have to do it, by studying the area and see the possibility of changing the land use and zoning from one zone to the other. But that limits the area where we can move. That's why we've been asked, we've been ordered, in actual fact, to find an AI tool to do it on behalf of us rather than we do it human. So let the machine tell us what we need to do. So we have to input all the data, and that may be also the answer that D.Maher gave already for using the AI tool. To use the AI tool, you need a proper infrastructure. So you need the whole infrastructure to be ready in order for you to use that AI. So that's the challenge that we have now. So I don't know if you've got an idea where you can help us on that. That will be really nice and pretty. Thank you.
So I must admit, this is not necessarily my area of expertise. So you kind of go into kind of urban planning and sort of landscaping and so forth. I would say that's kind of what you are describing to me there. So I think two things come to mind. I would very much think of AI as, kind of it is still, most of the use cases are in automating or kind of streamlining existing ways of working versus, inventing completely new ways of doing things, right? So almost like the lens through which I think about that question is like, hey, the way you do things today, is there a possibility of kind of replicating it with, the use of AI? Now, like, I think LLMs and where the technology is going are extremely good at dealing those types of situations. So unstructured kind of data, all kinds of sort of inputs and, giving them to it and seeing what it spins out. I'm not 100% sure of like the current landscape of what types of tools exist in that space at the moment. I know there have been some solutions also kind of for the urban design and urban planning space. I'm not as familiar with the area. But yeah, my takeaway would be that I think it's just one of those items that you'd have to kind of, almost like with trial and error. Do you like that sort of research of what's out there? And maybe even like try like even the simplest, like for a lot of the problems, like even the simplest ChatGPT is like actually the best solution for solving some of your problems. So like seeing like, hey, are you able to maybe replicate something with that and kind of going from there? So.
Yeah, and I might give you some inspiration. I live in Stockholm, working there as well. We have also the same problem. Many people moving to the capital city. We have a beautiful forest, but at the same time we need to consume land to build the new houses and so on. So what the city did, is that they classified the zones and ranked them to different ranking, and they started. This is like don't touch. Yes, this can remake, and this easy to use or change the use. And they used like the GIS first to do the mapping, and I think, not sure if they use AI or a human brain, but then they have like scenarios of these lands can be transformed. But the first step is to classify them to different categories, so you know which one that you shouldn't touch, which one that you can easy okay. Thanks a lot for the very good questions. And my last question to you before we finish this panel is that what is your one key takeaway for our audience? How can we drive more sustainable future for social housing using innovation? It's a very big question. So what is your takeaway message to our audience? How can we use innovation to drive more sustainable social housing projects? Dr. Maher?
I think we have to use technology. We have to be innovative. Okay, we need to improve. We need to improve the quality to provide the best for the end users. But keeping in mind, okay, costs. Keep in mind the requirement. Keep in mind the cultural need. And we balance it in between.
Yeah.
Okay, but we cannot just work in technology and forget all the other needs.
Other aspects. Thank you. Oli?
So say maybe my main message or main takeaway. I'd say it very much links to that whole idea of like, hey, ultimately technologies are very much the tools to means to an end. And I think almost thinking about it from the perspective of, hey, okay, what innovations do we need to use is almost like the wrong way to look at it, right? It's almost like, hey, what do we want to accomplish? What is like the kind of starting from there and then thinking, okay, what solutions can actually best help us with that? So,
thank you. Ethan?
Yeah, so innovation around the silos, whether it's technology, or any discipline or any government, sometimes perpetuates those silos. So I think technology for an existence and AI, it's the biggest opportunity and the biggest challenge. If we apply it, if we ask the questions, the prompts are still within the silos of different disciplines, and so we see place and the space between buildings as the silo buster, as a way to turn upside down the conversation, make it more accessible to everybody, make it practical, grounded in action, and help us ask the deeper systemic questions, often simple questions though, about what we want to become, how we want to shape and participate in our world. And there's ways everyone can contribute. Everybody has skills and solutions. And in a larger sense, we kind of understand a lot of the problems, we understand a lot of the solutions, the SDGs, but we don't have the systems through which to collaborate to do that. So we see Place as a way that disrupts and enables the new systems of governance, of financing, of development, that draws the best out of what we have. It's an additive yes and approach. Most disciplines are in a paradigm of what we call project-led. Better still is sort of discipline-led. Let's hire the best experts from elsewhere. The next evolution is what we call place-sensitive, where disciplines are responsive to nature, to culture and health and environment, but we're still controlling the outcomes and the solutions. And we think the next evolution, though, is to be place-led, to build the capacity of and work in service of strong places, and how that then draws out and connects many different disciplines and resources that are needed for creating a sustainable future. Last point is our work. My father actually organized the first Earth Day in 1970, and I grew up around a lot of the founders of the environmental movement, but we see the environmental movement sort of wasn't about cities and places at first, and now the opportunity we see to reinvigorate and reinvent people's capacity to address the bigger environmental crisis. We see placemaking as a way to challenge and support people to take responsibility for the world beyond their home and to become co-stewards of the environment. So it's not just about preserving green space and greening, but placemaking is much more is addressing these environmental challenges much more fundamentally, and in a way that we can actually get there. We're not going to get there through sort of the sustainable, technologically driven approaches alone.
Yeah, thank you. And please, but Ian.
It's been a breath of fresh air to see how Bahrain's approach from the government all the way down through to developers is very, very much inclusive and interactive. We don't have that. We struggle. And what we need is more collaboration between people like myself and companies like myself that are trying to make a difference, and the people that are making the rules as to how you can actually build them, not just from the planning, but how you can access the funding to make this, to put people into a position where they feel happy and they're welcome. And again, to see how you're working here with such a level of interaction from the top all the way down to make this work and happen. This is what we struggle with, to get the innovation and the new ideas actually into practice. We've got so many people that like to say, we've thought of this, please do it.
Yeah.
And that's what we need. And we can only get away with doing it as a small company with the help of the government and to work directly with funders. So my big takeaway is I wish our government could actually work a bit better like yours and help push that through. You know, that's really what we need.
Yeah. I'm sorry that we need to close the panel. So thanks a lot for sharing your thoughts and projects and experience. Also, Your Excellencies and distinguished guests, thanks for active listening and very curious question. Keep up the good work. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
إذا نشكر المتحدثين في هذه الجلسة، وندعو الآن سعادة السيدة آمنة بنت أحمد الرميحي وزيرة الإسكان والتخطيط العمراني لتكريم المتحدثين في هذه الجلسة. ونبدأ مع سعادة الدكتور ماهر الشاعر، العضو المنتدب ونائب رئيس مجلس إدارة شركة بريق الرتاج بمملكة البحرين.